In our lowest moment, it is our artists that bring us together. It is our cultural products and our artistic expression that give us a renewed hope for life and bring us out of what could be potentially a breaking moment for our country, for our society, and together for our humanity. But in South Africa, it is artists and culture that mirror society and acts as a catalyst for social change. Before democracy, the sector mobilized society against apartheid and gave a voice to the silence. Since democracy, the country has seen an explosion of youth talent. But how substantial has this been given in the voice of young South Africans today? Good evening and welcome to Democracy 30. My name is Oliver Dixon. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. As we conclude our special Youth Month focus, we ask the question, do young South Africans have more opportunities for cultural expression? Joining us in this discussion in studio is actor and dancer Ungani Ndlovu, Haroon Gan Sali, who is an artivist and cultural worker. And joining us over Zoom is Northern Cape artist and Nama rapper Freudelisha Palm, otherwise known as Boki. But first, let's take a look at this insert put together by our producer Hazel Friedman.
Jerusalem.
Embracing a new era of cultural freedom and inclusivity after oppression and exclusion. During apartheid, resistance and revolution were the rallying cries for many artists. They were cultural activists or artivists, using art as a weapon of struggle.
We knew that what we were doing was, in the eyes of the state, wrong, and that there could be consequences. But because we were part of a moral fight against something as unjust and inequitable like apartheid, we knew that we were on the right side of history in order to exercise the right that we were fighting for, which was freedom of creative expression.
During 30 years of democracy, the world has become a gallery, stage and screen for a young generation. Some have earned global fame in the visual arts, theatre, dance, film, music, and through a multicultural mix of styles like township-based Amapiano and classical music.
Amapiano is the biggest export right now. I believe that this project is such an important project to have in this time, in this era, to celebrate really 30 years of where we've come from.
But this is not a single story of before and happily ever after. Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has the right to participate in the arts. But many remain excluded through inequality, corruption, and allegedly the misappropriation of public funds earmarked for the arts.
My fellow South Africans, welcome on board South African Airways, your one-way ticket to junk status.
The perspective I've gotten from older generations is really something that's now sitting with me. The dream that I'm living is something that they hoped for quite some time ago, and even in that sense, the dream is not realized yet.
And young artists continue to confront injustices perpetrated both during and after apartheid. Our cultural sector is a multi-billion rand industry, yet many artists die as paupers. And as these stories unfold, the role of young artivists and the quest for creative freedom are as crucial as ever.
Do we as young people have greater opportunity for cultural expression in our democracy? That is the question we're asking you this evening. Ungani, I want to start with you.
Sure.
It's never been a greater time to be a South African artist. We've got a plethora of examples of artists doing phenomenal, both locally, domestically, on the continent, and globally. Our canvas is no longer just the four walls of South Africa. Our canvas is the endless globe of the universe. Have we, to full potential and maximization, exploited that? And is there an opportunity, are the barriers to entry of it lowered as a cultural worker, as an artist, as somebody that wants to express themselves through their naturally gifted talent?
Firstly, thanks for having me. I think that's a great question. Is the standard lowered? I wouldn't say it's lowered. I think through technology we've been able to have different opportunities that allow us to go a little more global, a little more international, a lot sooner than one would say, you know, before time.
Yeah.
But I think that there's still a lot of more room for us to be able to maximize on that opportunity from a South African landscape, because a lot of what, at least from my perspective, what we see is it's export and not a lot of import. So how do we then capitalize on what it is that is going out, but within the South African landscape, which would then include tourism and a whole bunch of other different factors within the country. So I think there's still a lot of room to exploit how things are going right now versus not doing it, if I can put it that way.
Yeah. Harun, what's your take on it? Are we in a better off position than we were 30 years ago as far as the opportunity to express, the freedom to express, just even that, not fearing going to jail or being persecuted based on your artistic expression? And have we taken it to full exploitation?
Well, I think the really fundamental principle here is that our right to the freedom of expression is protected, which goes far beyond the freedom of speech, which is just to express your opinions. We can enact our frustration, our joy, our protest in a way that is constitutionally protected. And I think there are very few places in the world that really have that as a core fundamental principle. And I think that South African artists and South African activists have really got quite an expanded ability to challenge the status quo, challenge society in a way that can make a difference, truly.
Okay, I want to bring you in. Particularly minorities have the right to express found real place in our democracy today, especially when you speak on really controversial things affecting the most vulnerable people of South Africa.
Yeah, I'm a very proud descendant of the Namas, and as you know, it's an ancient culture of the southern continent. But unfortunately, it's a historical fact that my culture, along with many others, was decimated and is still marginalized as a legacy of colonialism. We have a different accent because we are Namas, but we speak Afrikaans. And the goal for me is that we'll take all our beautiful culture of this South Africa, and we mold it into a collective culture to put us with, and it makes us unique. So it can put us on a higher stage as when it comes to the world stage, because we already have a big appetite of different countries that love South African music. But how beautiful can it be if we put all those cultures together and take it to the world?
Yeah. Harun, what does it mean to be an artivist, to be an artist and an activist? The confluence of those two roles, how does it manifest?
I think it's a very complicated question because at times they really do contradict themselves. I mean, I don't really think I had a choice to be an activist. I think my life would be incomplete if I didn't continue that trajectory that predated me. But the fact that I have got a language that crosses languages, in that art itself is a language that you can communicate with, and you don't necessarily need education or to be able to speak the same tongues as someone else to gain understanding and therefore gain education and influence people somehow. So I find that a very liberating device, to be honest, and therefore as an activist to be expressing yourself through art has limitless potential, not only in what you can express but how it can be received.
Yeah. You know, oftentimes when you say someone is an artivist, an actor, an activist as well as an artist at the same time, it is assumed, they're doing protest theatre and they're doing highly conscious music. Last night I was at a concert by Stogie T, and he said, you guys have accused me of being a conscious rapper all my life. I'm just speaking what I see to be the lives of people. Have we lost an ilk of artists that do just that just reflect at the most mundane level the lives of South Africans?
Well, I think we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of art and the different forms that exist? You know, like for someone like me in film, television, stage, performance, our job is to reflect society back to itself. So if Stogie T is telling you things that you relate to and things that you're seeing in your landscape, he's doing exactly that. But I think, to what extent do we do that? Because there's also the fiction side of things, which helps us to forget about what it really looks like at ground level. But when we really show each other what it's like at face value and talk the truth, how is that then received? And then what do we do about that? Because a lot of it, it's almost like it comes in one ear and it goes out the other side. So yeah, I think the level of respect and attention and willingness to let it affect us is something that we've let go.
Yeah. Boki, what has being an artist done for you, done for your life, especially the people around you who consume your art, the people who are impacted by the things you speak about and rap about in your songs? What has it done for you in your life?
It has done a lot for me because it took me out of a hole where I was in. And as an artist, we know that our art, it is our relief, it's our way to express ourselves. And me, mostly, I speak about the truth. I speak about things that happens in the community and what happens in many homes. But as we all know, it's a struggle for me, especially as a female artist, because I've been so long in this industry since 2009, and it was only 2019 that I actually was offered a platform to get that exposure to speak to people. But people mostly, they don't want to hear about the truth. They don't want the honesty. So I try to impact the children more so that they can grow up with the knowledge.
Absolutely.
So I do a lot for the community. I try at least, especially when it comes to the youth of South Africa and upcoming artists that wants to go into this industry.
Yeah. After the break, we take you through some of the highlights that South African art has achieved, not just domestically, but also globally. But we'll also take a look at perhaps some of the lowlights that art and artists have experienced in their South African lifetime. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Democracy 30. Now, South Africa is home to some of the most decorated artists in the world, some of the most talented artists in the world. And we're unpacking the lived realities of artists in South Africa and ask the question, do we have better expression opportunities in our 30 years of democracy? I'm still in discussion with actor and dancer Hungani Ndlovu. Harun Gan Sali, who is an artist, an activist and a cultural worker, joins us, as well as Northern Cape rapper, Nama rapper in particular, Boki, joining us on Zoom. But before we go back to the conversation, I want us to take a look at some of our most accomplished moments, some of the highlights that South African artists have brought to our country as a means of joy. We can't forget that moment in 2006 when the Toti crew lifted that Oscar award. It became an opportunity for us where we saw a great deal of potential in our ability to export our stories, to take it to the rest of the world, and to have it told authentically. And many of our artists that have achieved great milestones over the years have done exactly that. Soweto Gospel Choir winning a Grammy in 2007 and 2008. Black Coffee winning that Grammy in 2022. Wouter Kellerman, Zakes Bantwini, and Nomcebo. These are all young artists. Trevor Noah, he's an Emmy Award winner. Grammy nominated, by the way, as well. I want to maybe ask this. Ngani, as we see these highlights, I mean, I want us to take you back to that 2006 moment where, Toti got that Oscar. Yeah. I think it was an Oscar for best foreign language film, right? As that is happening, artists become a lot more prestigious. Actors become a lot more prestigious. We now know that we have the ability to tell our stories to the rest of the world in our language authentically by ourselves. Yeah. But artists don't live lives of glamour when the cameras go off, when the lights go off, when the cameras go off. Artists are struggling. Take us through some of those struggles.
I mean, it's so amazing to look at something like this and it's amazing achievements, but you come back home and the reality is you're performing under laws from the 60s and the 70s, which are way before this 30 years of democracy that we talk about. So as a performer, for Tsotsi, for example, a film that has gone internationally and surpassed so many bounds, yet, as a lead actor, Presley, you have 0 royalties from such a film. Why? Because the laws don't allow you to get your royalties. And that comes in when you talk about performance protection. So I think it's so great to be able to look at the achievements, but then it also makes us realize how far outdated actually our laws are. So Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. I mean, we've seen so many different actors asking for funds online because they are struggling to support their own families or even just pay for food on the table. So it just shows you that as much as there's great achievements, there's still a road for us to travel. But again, the question is, are we willing to travel that road?
Yeah. Okay. Art is a multi-billion-dollar industry in South Africa.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have a part in it? Do you feel like you're benefiting from the value of the artistic dividend? But more importantly, do you feel supported by both private sector institutions and the government in giving you a platform, not just to express yourself, but to make a living off of it?
I'm very positive, but I'm also very mindful of the challenges that we face. And as a young woman in this sector, I'm going to do my best. And no matter the obstacles. However, I'm also very positive that there's a general feeling of cooperation and togetherness, especially now after the elections. It seems that there is an opportunity for us to work together as South Africans to achieve the goal that we want to achieve. So yeah, and the challenges for me is I'm still struggling to get to where I am, especially in the time of lockdown. Like as artists, we could only be able to perform on stage 1. And it was a fight. It was we had to even fight with the government just to look after us. But besides those, I have the platforms through my journey walking here. I have at least got some, like I can say, connections. I have people I can turn to make things easier for me. But it doesn't mean because I put in the work and I do all the hard work that it's always that nice, like you said now. So the struggle remains, but I'm positive and I'm very mindful that things are just going to get better for our country.
Not too long ago, there was a Minister of Arts, Culture and Sports in South Africa who was later dubbed the Minister of Condolences, because the only ever time you heard from that minister was when condolences were being sent out to artists that have passed away and are no longer with us. Yeah. At a leadership level, has the government lost all sense of what art is, does, and why it's important?
I don't think it's only at a governmental level, because I don't think we necessarily have to ask government for all the solutions to our problems. I think there's a huge industry-wide gap between those who sell the art and those who benefit from it and those who make it, right? The industry is largely untransformed. The people who own the galleries and own the theaters and own the film production companies are the same people essentially from before this 30 years of democracy we're talking about. And I found myself very much in an industry where I realized that there was no space for marginalized artists, that there was no rights protection beyond what the government are going to do from the actual industry themselves. Our IP rights are not really protected in the way that they should be. Estates of artists are being completely exploited, and it's through that I've had to come to an understanding that we actually have to build a new system over and above, waiting for solutions to come our way.
Yeah. We remember that Brett Mary piece, right? So controversial. But it was controversial at an ownership level, right? Precisely because of what you're saying. The people that own the galleries, the theaters, the studios, the production companies are not themselves the creators of the art. Why have we not been able to move the means of ownership, the production ownership, into the hands of artists?
I'm going to drop the usually used racialized term that gets used with this, but it's because of monopoly capital. Because
you can say white monopoly capital.
But I'll leave that out because it's white monopoly capital. It's monopoly capital. It's the fact that industries are monopolized. And until we build alternatives, until we build art institutes, until we build our own foundations, it's going to be firstly in the hands and to the benefit of those elite, but secondly, it's not in their interest to transform the industry. we have to actually do that, and we actually have to do that, ironically, in a way that competes with them. Competes with these big galleries, or competes with the theatres and the film production companies, so that, capital is demonopolized.
Okay. Ungani, you said earlier that the advent of technologies and new technologies have enabled artists to express themselves and to grow and find platforms. Yeah. Have they been able to use those platforms equally the same way to create financial value and security for themselves, and perhaps to take back the ownership of their art?
To some degree, I'd say yes. We look at like content creation and social media. There's a whole new, if I can say, market there where you're able to create content and work with different brands, which obviously gives you some form of income. And as a freelancer, that can give you some form of stability. And that's something that's worked for someone like me, because during a time like Boki was mentioning, like COVID, you're at home creating content, you're still making some form of an income, because the funds that were provided by government to take care of you are actually not taking care of you. So I think there's that element of it, but because it's also such a new industry, there's pretty much zero regulation. So it's literally you throw out your finger and you hope that there'll be some wind to give you a direction in which the wind is going, and then you'll try and follow that path. And because of that, you still face a whole bunch of exploitation, because you're finding yourself in a space of marketing, because now you're working with different brands. And when you look at the commercial space, it's a whole other ball game, which we're not well versed in. We're here to bring life to performances. We're here to entertain people, but now I need to understand the back end of production and producing and so forth, so that
and balancing the books and
contracts, accounting and all of that stuff, so it becomes such a huge thing, and one then goes, what am I doing this for? Am I really out here just to make ends meet and like be stable, or am I wanting to do this because I want to reflect society back to itself? I want to entertain people. So it becomes a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Boki, it's easy to say as an artist, I'm going to do the whole independent thing. I am going to put on my own shows. I'm going to publish my own music. But when the people who are attracted to your art are people that can't necessarily afford to buy the tickets to your shows, or can't necessarily afford the money to buy the albums, where does that leave you as an artist when you realize that, the state of the economy and the state of the country is the way it is, and therefore selling my art just becomes that much more difficult?
It's so good.
Of course, as an artist, especially in the music industry, we are faced with many challenges. But we can use those developments. Like we have been, technology often replaces us in terms of what we are able to express as artists. But in the sense of where it leaves me with just more hard work, more determination, and a lot of patience. And that's what I've learned as an artist, especially as an artist that's been in this industry for more than 15 years. But as an artist, when it comes to my people that listen to my music, I always make an exception. Like, I had a show in Springbok Lodge last year, June month, for my people. I've never performed there. I only perform like in the Western Cape, or where my gigs that I get is always far away, but at least in that money only, it doesn't, how can I say, it doesn't maintain the lifestyle that I want to provide for my children. So I make it easier, like I booked the bus, but I paid it out of my pocket. But then they had to pay to get on there and get there. I made some that came to me and said that, no, I cannot afford to go there, but I really want to go. And then I just keep tickets at home. So I said, okay, I'll give you like that, or you can pay later, or whenever you can. So that's what I try to do. But in the Western Cape, or in other provinces, it's different and it's hard. Because the expenses in other provinces is high. But I make it work. I make it work for my artists. I make it work for my fans, and I try to make it work for me as a mother.
Yeah. It's a big risk if you can't fill up the theatre, Ungani.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you'll know that theatres are struggling. You know, since COVID, the whole theatre culture has changed completely. It's tough, you know.
Cinemas, I can't remember when I was talking to one.
Cinemas are closing down. Literally, cinemas are closing down, which means that it's not just our work that's not being seen, but it's also other people's livelihoods who work at the cinema. So it has a ripple effect on so many other livelihoods other than the artist or the performers. So yeah, I mean, we produced a show not so long ago at a theater, and we could barely sit half capacity just because the culture of going to the theater is so far gone. You know, you have to make such an effort. If you don't have well-known people performing, it's going to be tough.
Artists will potentially die out, but the art will never die out. It's a short string from a successful artist to a, you know, poverty-stricken artist, and it's reflective of the state of the country and the community and the economy. Is there a way artists can insulate themselves from that, or is it a reality they have to live with?
I think it's a reality that we have to live with, in that you're constantly up and down the ladder. There's no up and that's where you'll remain. On a personal note, I worked for 10 years in the height of production in a very professional capacity, to really realize firsthand how the industry is designed to exploit artists, and in perpetuity so. And that's brought us to a conclusion where I had to actually start our own thing. So it's an art institute. It's meant to actually benefit disadvantaged artists and create a kind of change in a system that's desperately needing that. And secondarily so, we must also understand that we're sitting in a moment where the rights of artists in terms of our IP bill, our intellectual property bill, is being potentially, you know, really backtracked beyond 30 years, you know, and secondary rights of sale, artists' estates, how do we deal with IP? This is a burning question on our time.
I mean, it's something that the new administration will have to deal with. Look, but I'm going to have to leave it here. Thank you so much, Ongani, Haroon, as well as Boki, for your time this evening. I really do appreciate it. Unfortunately, that's all that we have time for. So many more questions to talk about, so many more issues to unpack. But unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Do stick around. At 9 o'clock this evening, President Ramaphosa will be announcing the Cabinet of the 7th Administration live from the Union Buildings. The SABC will bring you that broadcast live. Don't go away. Good night.